In a small village in rural India, where the mornings smelled of wet earth and wood smoke, there lived a man named Mahesh. The village was simple: narrow dirt lanes, low houses with tiled roofs, buffalo tied in the shade, children running barefoot under the wide sky. The river lay a short walk away, its slow current carrying reflections of palm trees and paper boats. Mahesh had grown up there with very little. As a boy, he knew the taste of going to bed hungry, the weight of patched clothes, the sting of dropping out of school too early because someone had to earn. Those memories never left him. They sat quietly in his chest like old stones. When he became a father, those stones turned into a promise. He would not let his children grow up the way he did. His son and daughter would not stand outside classrooms watching other children learn. They would not turn their faces away from sweets because they knew their parents could not afford them. In his heart, one vow repeated every day: his family would have more than he ever did. So he worked. Before the first light, while most of the village still slept, Mahesh would rise from the thin mattress on the floor. He would wash by the hand pump as the water ran cold over his cracked palms, then eat a simple breakfast and step out into the waking world. He did whatever work came his way. In the hot months, he labored in the fields, bent over rows of crops under a sun that burned his skin dark and leathery. In the cooler seasons, he went to nearby towns, carrying bricks on construction sites, climbing bamboo scaffolding with trembling legs. When there was no big job, he fixed roofs, repaired fences, carried sacks of grain, anything that would bring home a little more money. At night, when he returned, his clothes stiff with dust, he would see the dim glow of a lantern through the curtain of his small house. Inside, his wife, Sita, moved quietly between the cooking fire and the children's study mat. Their son and daughter sat cross-legged on the floor, school books open, pencils scratching on paper. Mahesh's body would ache, but his heart would soften at the sight. The childhood he had never known was unfolding in front of him in the form of sharp pencils, notebooks, and two small backs bent over homework. He cut corners everywhere else. He wore the same faded shirt until the cloth thinned. He refused new sandals even when the old ones split, tying them together with string. When extra work came, he took it. When celebrations came, he spent less on himself and more on uniforms, tuition, books. Years passed in this rhythm, sweat by day, quiet sacrifice by night, and a single guiding thought that every effort was stitching a stronger future for the family he loved. The children grew. Report cards came back with good marks. Teachers praised them. The boy became serious and focused, the girl quick and bright. The parents saved each slip of paper like treasure. Eventually, talk of college and city jobs began to circle around the household like distant birds. The day came when suitcases were packed. The lane in front of the house was crowded with neighbors. A bus waited on the main road, engine humming, ready to carry Mahesh's two children toward a new life in distant cities. Mahesh stood by the doorway, hands rough and empty, watching his son and daughter step out with bags that looked too large on their shoulders. His chest felt heavy, but his face did not show it. He had spent years dreaming of this very moment. He watched them walk away, watched the bus swallow them, watched the dust rise behind it. When the vehicle disappeared, silence fell in the lane. The house behind him seemed suddenly too large, too quiet. But Mahesh told himself that emptiness was the price of progress. The children would study, work, earn. They would not stand in the hot fields. They would walk on city roads, enter offices with glass doors, sit in rooms with fans and air conditioning. It was all he had ever wanted for them. For a while, the distance did not feel so wide. Phone calls came regularly. Crackling connections carried stories of crowded trains, new friends, tiny rooms shared with other students, the excitement of seeing tall buildings and bright lights for the first time. Mahesh did not understand every detail of their new lives, but he listened to every word, carrying each one like a precious coin. He kept working, even harder than before, sending what he could. Fees needed to be paid, rents needed to be covered. Whenever the pressure felt too much, he would picture his children in classrooms and offices, and the weight in his hands would feel lighter. Time moved on. The children finished their studies, found jobs, and began to build lives of their own. New responsibilities appeared. New rent, new furniture, new loans, new dreams. They were proud to send some money home at first. Mahesh and Sita would accept it with mixed feelings. Gratitude on one side, a quiet ache on the other that their children had taken on burdens so soon. Then, slowly, the river of connection began to thin. Work swallowed their energy. Calls became shorter and then less frequent. Festivals came with promises that next year they would surely visit. Sometimes they did, sweeping into the village with gifts and city stories, filling the old house with laughter for a few days before rushing away again. Other times, something always came up. A meeting, a deadline, a sudden crisis that could not be delayed. In the meantime, Mahesh's body began to bend under the years. The same back that had carried sacks of grain and bricks now ached when he bent to tie his laces. His hands, once quick and strong, would tremble when he lifted heavy pots. One day, climbing onto a tractor, his legs slipped and he fell hard on the ground. The pain that shot through his knee did not fully leave after that. Work started to slip away from him as quickly as his strength. Younger men took the heaviest jobs. Contractors chose fitter workers. Slowly, without any official ceremony, Mahesh drifted into an unspoken retirement. There was no pension, no letter, only longer days and the unfamiliar weight of unused hours. At first, he tried to help with small things around the house. He swept the courtyard, fed the chickens, fetched water from the pump. But the spaces between tasks grew. Soon he found himself sitting more often on the old charpoy by the doorway, watching the lane as people passed by. Morning stretched into afternoon, afternoon into evening. Sometimes he would hold his phone in his hand, staring at the screen, wondering if it was the right time to call one of his children. Then he would imagine them in busy offices, in crowded trains, carrying their own stress. He would put the phone down, afraid of disturbing them. The silence in the house grew deeper. The market trips became rarer as Sita's feet also began to hurt. They learned to live with less. They had always known how. Festivals came and went. One year, for a major celebration, Mahesh decided to decorate the doorway just like he had when his children were young. He swept the front path carefully, drew bright rangoli patterns with trembling hands, and hung a garland of marigolds that he had managed to buy with saved coins. All day he listened for the sound of an approaching taxi or the echo of familiar footsteps. Messages came instead. Apologies for not being able to make it, promises of next time, wishes typed quickly between tasks. As night fell and the last diya burned low, the marigolds hung limp in the warm air. Mahesh sat quietly on the charpoy, the glow from the small clay lamp reflecting in his eyes. He told himself that the children were not ungrateful, they were just busy, caught inside their own storms. Still, a small, sharp loneliness pierced through the comforting thoughts. The years continued to gather in fine lines on his face. One day, far away in the city, his son was rushing through his apartment late for work when a stack of old papers slid from a shelf. Among them was a faded photograph from school days. Two proud parents standing on either side of a boy with a prize in his hand, dust on the father's clothes, exhaustion in his eyes, and a tired but brilliant smile on his face. The son paused. Memories that had been pushed to the back of his mind began to surface. His father's hands smelling of soil and sweat, tiffin boxes appearing every day at school, even when money was tight, shoes bought after months of saving, exams written under the lamp of a lamp his father had worked overtime to pay for. Suddenly, the polite calls, the delayed visits, the excuses packed into text messages felt thin and hollow. Guilt flowed in, heavy and unexpected. On his way to work, he noticed an elderly man waiting alone at a bus stop, a bag at his feet, eyes fixed on some far point. For a brief, bracing second, he imagined his own father sitting like that, waiting for a bus that rarely brought anyone back to him. That night, he looked at his calendar, at the endless reminders and meetings. Then he closed his laptop, booked a ticket, and decided that work would have to wait for once. Days later, dust rose on the village road as a car rolled in. Mahesh, sitting on his usual charpoy, heard the unfamiliar engine and lifted his head. When he saw who stepped out, his heart jumped in his chest. The child who returned saw a father smaller than he remembered, shoulders more rounded, hair almost white, skin lined like cracked earth. Realized with a twist of shame that he had never really asked how they were managing, never really offered to share their aging burdens. He walked into the courtyard expecting anger, sadness, accusations. What he found instead was something else. Mahesh's face broke into a smile so wide it seemed to erase years. His eyes shone, not with reproach, but with a simple, overflowing joy at the sight before him. Hands that had carried bricks and harvests now shook as they reached out, not to question or to count the months since the last visit, but just to touch, to hold for a moment. He moved slowly around the courtyard, bringing out the best of what little they had. A slightly chipped steel glass filled with water, the last of the good tea leaves, a plate of biscuits carefully saved. He brushed dust from a chair, straightened a cushion that had faded in the sun. In every small gesture was the same message: you are here. That is enough. In the eyes of the child, the guilt grew sharper. The more the father silently welcomed, the more his absence felt like a wound. The past sacrifices, once hazy, now stood in sharp detail. Monsoon days when Mahesh had cycled through rain to bring medicine, summers when he had worked through fevers, winters when he had given his own blanket to cover a sleeping child. And now, in this season of his life, he asked for nothing. No repayment, no justifications, just a few shared hours, a few shared breaths, a few shared memories. That quiet grace cut deeper than any angry words ever could. Not every story like this has time left to heal its cracks. Not every parent lives to see their child turn around. But whether we are still in time or already too late, the truth remains. Everyone who is young today is walking toward the same old age they see in others. One day, our own steps will slow, our own hands will tremble, our own stories will hang in the air, waiting to be heard or ignored. The way we treat the elders in our lives, parents, grandparents, neighbors, old teachers, is not just about them. It is also a reflection of who we are and a quiet seed of how we may be treated when our hair turns gray and our world shrinks to a few familiar rooms. Elders are not finished chapters to be closed and put away. They are living pages of our own story. The reasons we could study, the reasons we could dream, the reasons we stand where we do. Their worth does not end when their earning power ends. If anything, that is when their presence, their experience, and their need for simple love matters most. If you still have someone waiting for your call, your visit, your time, do not let the days slip by on the excuse of being busy. Work will always be there. Responsibilities will always multiply. But doors do not stay open forever. Neither do hearts nor lives. If this story touched something in you, take a second to reflect. Share your thoughts with others, start a conversation. And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, stay with this channel so we can keep walking through these lessons together. Until the next story, remember, elders are your pillars of strength. Don't miss them.